What's up, y'all? Welcome to At the End of the Day podcast. I'm your host, Cherie, and I appreciate you for tuning in today. And I also hope that you're having a good day so far. Now, before we get into today's episode, I need you to hit that like and subscribe button because we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And I also want you to be notified as soon as every episode drops, okay? Now, when this episode is over, feel free to leave a comment because I truly enjoy hearing from you guys. For weekly encouragement, make sure you go follow me on Instagram and TikTok under the name ATEOTD Podcast. And in the case that you don't have Instagram or TikTok, your girl does have a Facebook page that you can go like right after this episode. If you need someone to speak to or you have a topic that you want to hear me talk about, feel free to send me an email to ateotdpodcast8@gmail.com. And as I always say, make sure you share this episode with someone because it may encourage them and bless them more than you think. So last week's episode, I spoke about how we wait and that it is important for us to speak life while we're waiting, that we need to pray and believe in spite of what it looks like, that we need to change our perspective about waiting in general, and that we need to start asking ourselves, what should we be learning while we're waiting? And most importantly, that we need to hold on to the promise that God gave us even before we started waiting. Because so many times we get discouraged about the fact that we are waiting that we forget about the promise that God gave us before we had to start waiting. This week I want to talk about God's timing. Okay, because there's many of us that feel like God is just holding us back, that He is just blocking everything it is that we want to happen in our lives. And then we start to believe that the Lord just doesn't want us to be happy. Now, we have our own truths about God's timing, okay? We believe and know that God can do anything it is that He wants to do. And this is why the place that you're in right now is frustrating because for whatever reason, He continues not to do the very thing it is you're praying and believing Him for. Another truth we have about God's timing is that if God wanted to, He would. And we become frustrated because for whatever reason, He continues not to do it. So instead of us trusting that God knows best, even though He continues not to do it, He still knows best. We begin to use Him making us wait as a way to determine how much He loves us, how much He sees us, how much He cares for us, and how much He hears us. But the truth is that He makes us wait because He loves us, because He hears us, because He sees us, because He cares for us. Last week I spoke about how changing your perspective about waiting will help you learn how to wait. And the same thing goes for God's timing. When you change your perspective about God's timing, it will help you understand that the Lord is never late, He's never too early, but He is always on time. So in today's episode, I will encourage you to trust God's timing. So, let's talk about it. It all comes down to the fact that we can't predict the Lord's timing for anything, okay? So you may be waiting for the Lord to heal your body. You may be waiting for Him to bless you with a new home or a new car or a new job. You may be waiting for Him to bless your business with a new business deal. You may be going ahead and waiting for the Lord to remove you from a toxic situation, whether it be your job or a relationship. You may be waiting for the Lord to bring you your spouse. You may be waiting for the Lord to help you and your spouse conceive a child. But the thing is that even though you're waiting, it doesn't mean that God is late. Only the Lord knows when He plans to bless you, because there are many factors that the Lord has to evaluate before He blesses you. It's not just about Him going ahead and answering your prayers. It's about Him making sure that certain things are in alignment for you to receive that blessing. Whenever I think about God's timing being perfect, I always think about Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8 through 9. And it says, "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Now, the truth is, I could end the episode right there, okay? Because I feel like it truly sums up everything that the Lord is trying to say to us about His timing being perfect. But because I love y'all, let's break that verse down, okay? Now, the first part of the verse says, his thoughts are nothing like our thoughts. This means that our perception of something doesn't match the way the Lord sees something. We can look at something bad and deem it as something bad. But the Lord can look at that same thing and deem it as an opportunity to grow. Why? Because we only see the physical, but the Lord has the ability to see beyond the physical. Then the verse goes on to say, his ways are far beyond anything we could imagine. This means that the way he plans to do something in our lives is far beyond anything we could imagine on our own. Now, we just want to go from A to Z with no delays. Meanwhile, the Lord's plans are for us to go from A to B, stop at C, take a detour at D, cautiously proceed to E, linger around F for about 2 years. Fast forward to R and then wait at S for about 2 years, okay? And then accelerate as fast as you can to Z. It's not about going from one point to another. The Lord has things that he needs to do in between each step sometimes. This also means that we are only asking God for things that we can imagine, not what the Lord can imagine for us. And the problem with that is that our imagination is a reflection of how we view ourselves and what we feel like we can handle or what we feel like God can do in our lives based on where we are now, not based on where he can take us. For example, say you are believing God for $500,000 because you never envisioned or believed that you could have millions of dollars. Okay? So you settle a little bit. You say, Lord, $500,000 will do. That's fine by me. Meanwhile, the Lord, while you're waiting for $500,000, is doing a transformation in your life, in your mind, in your body, in your circumstances, because he plans to bless you with more than $500,000. He plans to bless you with more than $1 million. He wants to bless you with millions of dollars, but he needs you to have a mindset of someone who can handle having millions of dollars. That's why the verse goes and says that his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Not that he's at the same place as us. His thoughts are always going to be higher because he wants bigger and better than us. And we can't fathom what that higher is because our mind is not like the Lord's. It all comes down to the fact that we think we know, but we really don't. Okay? We think that we know what is best for us, but we don't. All right. We also tend to think that our timing is perfect, but again, it isn't. Okay. Because we can't see beyond what's happening right now. We only see where we want to go. Therefore, our timing, not that good. Not that good at all. All right. I know that may stink for a lot of y'all, and it may be a hard pill to swallow, but it's the truth. We don't know anything about what is best for our lives, especially when it comes down to timing. Hence why we need to leave all that to the Lord. He knows best. We tend to act like God is withholding everything good from us. But I'm starting to realize that that doesn't make sense. Because if we truly believe that the Lord loves us and he cares for us and he wants the best for us, then why would he go ahead and withhold anything good from us? That doesn't make sense. And if Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 that says he plans to prosper us, then if that is true, why would he withhold anything good from us? That too doesn't make sense. It comes down to the fact that we think the Lord does or doesn't do things just because. That he has no reason behind why he says no or not yet. But the truth is that the Lord has a reason for every single thing he does. And it doesn't pertain to just him going ahead and saying yes. Okay? He doesn't just have a reason for his yes. He has a reason for his no, and he has a reason for his not yet as well. Now, if we're being honest, I feel like after we have endured a season of waiting and we finally receive everything it is we prayed for and then some, I feel like it's in that moment that we reflect and realize why God made us wait. And all of a sudden it made sense. Because while you were waiting, it didn't make sense. Hence why you should focus on how you wait and not on the fact that you're waiting. Because when you do finally go ahead and receive everything it is that you've been praying for, that is when you realize why the Lord made you wait. That He was actually working behind the scenes, even when it looked like He was doing nothing. And that maybe, just maybe, God actually knew what He was doing all along. So today, I just want to share 3 truths about God's timing. And I'm going to use examples in the Bible to encourage you. So the first truth is that the Lord is never late. Now, when we ask the Lord to bless us, we have so many things that we come to Him with in advance, all right? We already have in our mind how long it should take the Lord to do it. Already figured that out, calculated before we even ask Him to do it, all right? Then we go ahead and we determine for ourselves how long we feel like we can wait patiently for the Lord to do it. And we never say the time frame out loud. Never. Because we know as children of God, that ain't right. Don't do that. But we keep it in the back of our mind all the time. Okay, Lord, 2 years. That's how long I can wait. That's how long I feel like you could do it. All right, we getting past 2 years. We're doing it all the time in our minds. And then when He doesn't do it in our time frame, or things start to look stagnant, we begin to believe that the Lord is late. The Lord's timing is completely different than ours. Even when it looks like nothing is happening, that doesn't mean that the Lord is doing nothing. We tend to focus more on what we see than the God that we know. And if we focus on the God that we know, then we understand that He comes even when it looks late, but yet He's still on time. How do I know? The story of Lazarus. So today, I brought my Bible, and I'm going to read John chapter 11, verse 1 through 44. So it says, "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped His feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, 'Lord, the one you love is sick.' When He heard this, Jesus said, 'This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it.'" Now I'm just going to pause right there. So in this moment, Jesus is speaking life over Lazarus without even seeing Lazarus face to face. Okay? This is a message just being sent to Jesus. So He is believing that this sickness that He's hearing about is not going to kill Lazarus, regardless of the fact that He hasn't seen Lazarus face to face. And what is this called? Faith. Now, our struggle with faith comes from the fact that we want to see things happening now in the physical. We don't want to wait and believe that God is going to do it. We want to see it right now. And mind you, during that time, they didn't have cell phones, okay? So there was no picture that was sent. There was no FaceTime of Him seeing Lazarus. He had to believe that what He was saying about Lazarus was going to be true, regardless of whether He was seeing him or not. So let's continue. So it says, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when He heard that Lazarus was sick, He stayed where He was 2 more days. And then He said to His disciples, 'Let us go back to Judea.'" Now let me stop right there again. Now I feel like it's important to stop there because I want you to pay attention to the fact that Jesus receives the information, but yet He waits 2 more days. He loves Mary. He loves Martha. He loves Lazarus. The Lord is a healer. Jesus knew He is a healer, okay? So why wouldn't He go? That's what everybody's thinking in the physical, right? If you know who you are, you know that you have the ability to save Lazarus' life, why did Jesus not leave? Why would He stay there for 2 more days? But the thing is that He didn't leave because He knew it wasn't time yet. He knows who He is. He knows what He's able to do. But yet He understands that there is a time for everything. And it wasn't time for Him to go yet. Let's continue reading. "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours a daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. After he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Let me stop right there again, okay? So even after 2 days has passed, right, the Lord still decides to go to Lazarus. He's still believing that Lazarus is not going to die from this sickness. Now really think about it. If Jesus believed that it was the end, then why would he go? Exactly. He went because he still believed that 2 days wasn't going to change the fact that Lazarus was not going to die from this disease, that was not going to be the end of Lazarus. That is why Jesus still decided to go anyway. He wasn't focused on how long Martha and Mary are waiting for him. He didn't focus on that. He focused on what he believed to be true and what he had already declared over Lazarus' body. And I think many of us have to focus on what it is that the Lord has declared over you already. Don't focus on the timeline. Don't focus on how long it's been. What did God say? We tend to allow the things that we see happening around us and in our lives to deter us from fully believing in what God has already told us. And if we're being honest, we want a smooth way, but it isn't always going to be that way. Sometimes it's going to look like the promise and the very thing you're praying and believing God for is dead. But the beautiful thing about the Lord's timing is that something is only dead until he says that it's dead. Now, I've also said that the Lord allows certain things to happen in our lives to bless others. And this is a prime example. Jesus says that he's glad that he wasn't there so that the disciples could go ahead and experience this beautiful miracle that's about to happen. Now, let's keep reading. So then it says, Then Thomas said to the rest of the disciples, Let us also go that we may die with him. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. So let's stop right there. Now remember I said that you can be honest with God, but you can also speak life at the same time. And I feel like that's exactly what Martha did. She went ahead and she shared that she was frustrated and disappointed that Jesus didn't show up sooner. But then she also follows it up by saying that she knows that God is going to give him whatever he asks for. So in that moment, she's choosing to believe in spite of her being disappointed that Jesus didn't come sooner. So let's keep reading. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Let me stop right there. Now, Jesus is still speaking life over Lazarus in his situation, even though he knows that Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days. And Martha is still choosing to believe. And let's be honest, Martha could have solely focused on what it looked like, because she did go ahead and watch her brother's body be put in that tomb 4 days ago. But yet Jesus is telling her to her face that Lazarus is going to rise again. And this is why what you choose to focus on while you wait will impact how you wait. Martha is choosing to believe and have faith, regardless of what it's looking like in this moment. Now, Mary, on the other hand, let's get to her, okay? After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Let's stop right there again. Now, I can't be mad at Mary because she kept it real, okay? For her, Jesus is late, okay? And I'm sure many of us have been in a situation where it looked like the Lord is extremely late. And it's easy to lose hope and faith in those moments because it doesn't look good at all. Now, just like the rest of us, Mary is well aware that Jesus is the Son of God, that he can do whatever it is that he wants to do, that he is a healer. So she feels like if Jesus had came before Lazarus died, that Lazarus would still be there with him. She loves her brother. Why would she want to watch her brother die? And for her, if Jesus had came as soon as he got the message, they wouldn't be looking at a tomb in that moment. Now, Mary is focusing on the physical. And I don't think we can blame her because her brother has been in the tomb for 4 days. Not a few hours. 4 days. At this point for her, Jesus isn't just late, but he's extremely late, okay? But let's keep reading. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, See how he loved him? But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Let's stop right there. Okay, please. We gotta stop. I gotta talk about this real quick. You are always going to have haters and people that love to sprinkle extra negativity while you are out here fighting for your life to remain positive and hold on to faith while you're waiting. So what did this teach us? You have to be careful who you surround yourself with while you're waiting. Because those people are either going to go ahead and believe with you and go ahead and pray with you, or there are going to be people that cause you to second guess what it is you're believing in. Now let's keep reading. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? Stop right there. Now, Martha is like many of us, okay? She out here playing double dutch with faith. All right. 1 minute she's in and she's believing what God is saying to her, and then the next minute she backpedaling like I don't know what's going on. Now, Jesus is so loving and caring that he takes out time to remind her of what he said in order to strengthen her faith. So many times we focus on what it looks like, so then we grow weary. And in that moment, Martha is focusing more on the physical than her faith. So at this point in the story, all right, Martha, Mary, and the Jews, they don't really have that much faith about the fact that Lazarus is about to walk out the tomb, all right? Because they all watched his lifeless body get put into the tomb 4 days ago. Can't emphasize the fact of 4 days, all right? 4 days ago. So for them to believe that Lazarus is about to walk out of this tomb just because Jesus said so is a choice that they have to make. And many of us have to make the same choice as well. We can't focus on what it looks like or how long something has been dead. If Jesus said that it is alive and that it is well, then we have to choose to believe. So let's keep reading. So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen, and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Now, I think it's important for us to notice that Jesus said Lazarus' name with authority. He didn't say it with hesitation. He said it with authority because he knew and believed with his entire being that Lazarus is about to walk out of that tomb. He said it in a way as if it was already done because he believed that it was already done. So what does this teach us? I feel like it teaches us that it looks like it is too late, but the Lord is always on time. And I also feel like it teaches us that the Lord allows delays for a reason. So even when something looks dead or too far gone, all Jesus has to do is speak life over it and it's brought back to life. So don't worry about how things look in your life right now. The Lord can change everything quickly. It don't take him long to do it. Nothing is too far gone when it comes to God's will for your life. So if it's meant for you to have it and experience it, the Lord is going to make it happen. A second truth about God's timing is that God's timing for you is sometimes meant to bless other people. Now, you waiting for God's perfect timing feels personal. And that makes sense because, you are the one waiting. But what if I told you that God doing this next thing in your life that you're believing for is bigger than just you? That is meant to bless other people as well. And that maybe, just maybe, that's why he has you waiting. Now, receiving everything you prayed and waited for is bigger than you. And I know that stinks to hear because you just want what you want when you want it. All right. But God's plan is always bigger than our plans. The Lord doesn't just withhold things from us because he's having a bad day. That's not how he moves. He has a purpose for every single thing he does or doesn't do. Now, just like Joseph, the Lord's timing for you receiving this next blessing is tied to other people being blessed as well. Now, I've spoken about Joseph on this podcast before, and that's because his story always encourages me to never focus on how things look and to hold on to the fact that God has bigger and better plans for me, regardless of what it looks like. And it also encourages me not to focus on what people are doing to me, okay? Because it reminds me that the Lord always has the upper hand, okay, at the end of the day. The Lord always, no matter what people try to do to destroy you, they don't have the final say, and absolutely they don't have enough power to destroy God's plan for your life. Now, just as a refresher, Joseph was given the gift of interpreting dreams, okay? And he had dreams that he was going to reign over his family. So let's read Genesis chapter 37, verse 5 through 11. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous, but his father kept the matter in mind. So it comes down to the fact that his father and his brothers did not like what Joseph had to say. Okay? They did not like the fact that was a dream that he was given. Weren't feeling it. Now the Bible informs us that a series of events occurs after Joseph goes and tells his brothers and his father about the dream that he had. Now, one of the events in the story is that Joseph's brothers tried to plot to kill him. Now you may be thinking to yourself, they wanted to kill Joseph, their brother, over a dream? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, it was partially about the dream, but no, because they also knew that Joseph was their father's favorite. So they wanted him going for that simple fact as well. Now, the only reason why they didn't kill Joseph is because one of the brothers had stopped the other brothers from killing Joseph, and he convinced them instead to put Joseph into a cistern. Now, cistern is kind of like a well, but it's not as deep because it collects rainwater. So the story goes on to talk about how Joseph's brothers sold him to the Ishmaelites for some silver. Okay. Then they went and took him to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar. So at this point, Joseph had been sold twice. Now, if I was Joseph, I would have felt some type of way about my brothers and God, because what are y'all doing? Not y'all out here selling me like I'm a thing. I'm a whole human. That is crazy. So Joseph connects with Potiphar while he's there, and Potiphar starts to put Joseph in charge of many different things. And he begins to like Joseph. But guess who else is starting to like Joseph as well? Potiphar's wife, okay? So much so that she tries to sleep with Joseph not once, not twice, but multiple times. And one of these times that she tries to sleep with Joseph, she grabbed onto his robe, and by him trying to go ahead and break away, the robe got left. Now the girl goes ahead and starts lying, telling people that Joseph tried to sleep with her against her will. Girl, please. Okay? But here's the problem. Potiphar actually believed her. So where does Joseph end up going? To prison. Now, while in prison, Joseph goes ahead and meets a baker and a cupbearer. Both of them end up having a dream that only Joseph can interpret. So after he does the favor of interpreting the dreams for them, he tells them, hey, when Pharaoh goes ahead and calls y'all out of this prison, please don't forget about me. Mention my name. Both of them like, bet, we got you. So the day comes, Pharaoh calls the cupbearer and the baker out of prison. Now Pharaoh goes ahead, kills the baker, going, bye, gotta go. And then the cupbearer lives. Now, do you think that the cupbearer does the one thing that Joseph asked him to do? No, he doesn't. He don't even remember Joseph. He don't even say nothing about Joseph. So what happens? Joseph stays in prison for another 2 years. That cupbearer had one job, and that was to remember who Joseph was, and he still didn't do it. Now, one day, Pharaoh goes ahead and has a dream, but he can't understand what this dream means at all. So he goes ahead and he calls for all the magician and wise men of Egypt, but he just couldn't find somebody to interpret. Just like the song says, he searched high and low, still couldn't find nobody. Okay? So now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the cupbearer remembers Joseph. So he brings Joseph's name up to Pharaoh. Pharaoh sends for Joseph to come up and interpret his dream. Joseph ends up letting Pharaoh know that the dream meant that there would be 7 years of an abundance from God, but then there's also going to be 7 years of famine, and that Egypt should prepare during the abundance for the famine that is going to come. He also let him know that God was saying in the dream that Pharaoh needs to appoint a wise man in order to pretty much be in control of everything that's about to happen in Egypt, so that that person can be in charge of the land of Egypt. Pharaoh ends up choosing Joseph, and at this point it means that God's plans and his promise had came to pass. Now Joseph's story continues on with all of Egypt and his family benefiting from the fact that Joseph interpreted dreams correctly and that he had amazing leadership skills. Joseph went through a season of waiting in order for the Lord to fulfill his promise. Now let's be real. Joseph had that dream about him reigning over his family well before he had to go through this season of waiting. And I'm sure if it was up to Joseph, he would have went straight from working in them fields straight to the kingdom. Okay? But the Lord had other plans. Now, the fact that the Lord had other plans for Joseph, does that mean that the Lord forgot about Joseph? No, it doesn't. It just means that the Lord required Joseph to endure a season of waiting in order for him to become who he needed him to become so that he could reign over the land and be the wise person over the land of Egypt. Now, even though Joseph experienced different trials and tribulations, he never forgot about God. When Pharaoh called him to go ahead and interpret those dreams, he had already endured being betrayed, being sold twice, being lied on. Okay? And still, he gave God credit for his ability to interpret dreams. It comes down to the fact that all of Egypt, Pharaoh, and his family all benefited from Joseph enduring a season of waiting. And I think Joseph's story also reminds us just how intentional God is. Because if Joseph doesn't get sold twice and doesn't get lied on, he doesn't get sent to prison. If he doesn't get sent to prison, then he doesn't mean the cupbearer that goes ahead and brings his name up to Pharaoh. You're focusing on the fact that the Lord hasn't done it yet. You're focusing on the fact that you've been waiting long enough as far as you're concerned. And you're also focused on the fact that you don't know when it will happen. But the truth is that this next blessing is bigger than you. You will not be the only one that is blessed when God says that it is time for you to receive this next blessing. You are focused on the blessing, but the Lord is focused on the details. And him being focused on the details doesn't mean that he forgot about you, what he said, or the fact that you've been waiting. It's in his details that we understand that he is working everything out in our favor. And the people that you know or don't know that may be blessed by you being blessed this next go around are also a part of the details. Joseph went through all of that just to end up where God had planned to put him the entire time. And the same goes for you. You are going to end up exactly where God plans to put you. And God is going to do exactly what he plans to do for you in your life. So stop worrying. And just like Joseph, we need to remember God regardless of how long we've been waiting and regardless of what it looks like. We have to stop allowing our frustration to cause us to become more distant from God. Instead, we need to lean more into God and who he says we are and what it is that he said he's going to do. And we need to do all these things because there is a reason for our wait. The Lord already knows how and when he plans to bless you. And he isn't going to allow you to be in this season of waiting forever. It's just that your blessing is tied to someone else receiving a blessing as well. And all of the time it needs to fit together. So stop being frustrated and trust the fact that the Lord knows exactly what he is doing. The third truth about God's timing is that there is a time for everything. The Lord can do whatever he wants to do. But most times he doesn't because our lives require a process. What do I mean by that? Jesus. Jesus went through the birthing process, being a teenager, and being an adult. He could have started and ended his life at the age of 33, but he didn't. Now, does that mean that it was a mistake? No, it doesn't. It just means that if Jesus had to go through the process of waiting for the right time, that means that we have to as well. Now, even though Jesus knew who he was, he didn't go ahead and show off to the people. Okay, he did not try to accelerate his process. Most of us, if we were Jesus, would need to be humbled real quick. But Jesus didn't have that problem. He endured the process of waiting for every step of his life. There's even 18 years in the Bible where we don't even hear about Jesus. And yet he was going through a waiting process. Now, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is when Jesus is at the wedding. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm about to read it to y'all real quick. It's found in John chapter 2, verse 1 through 2. So, I'm about to read that for y'all. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. Can you imagine having Jesus at your wedding? Like inviting him? Crazy. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." Sounds like a serious problem. "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. Now I think we can all agree that if we call our mother woman, if I call my mother woman, I'm pretty sure I would not be here today doing this podcast for y'all. I just want to put that little disclaimer out there, but we're going to keep reading. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." In other words, Mary's like, I said what I said, and you're going to do what I tell you to do. Like, why are you playing around? Like, you know who you are, you know? But we're going to keep reading. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to his servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and brothers and his disciples. There they stayed for a few days. Now, that's some good stuff. Gets me every time. Because Jesus even cared about time. His mother asked him to do something, and he's like, "Woman, it is not my time yet. Like, what are you doing? You're trying to accelerate my process. And I am well aware that this is not my time yet." So our biggest takeaway from that is that if Jesus can go ahead and put a delay on himself, on something that he knows that he can do, then why wouldn't he do the same for us? Now, even when I think about Jesus dying on the cross, he could have taken himself off that cross, but he didn't. He understood that he had to endure a process. It was painful, and yet he still endured the process of waiting and accepting the fact that it was his time. Understanding God's timing isn't just about you understanding that God can do it, because that's a given. We know he can do it. You understanding God's timing is understanding that he designates a time for every single thing he does and allows to happen in our lives. There's a time to be happy. There's a time to be sad. There's a time to be broken. There's a time to be healed. There's a time to sow. There's a time to reap. There's a time to endure financial struggle. There's a time to endure overflow of income. There's a time to be tired. There's a time to rest. The Lord designates a time for everything. He's not winging it. Most times we feel like the Lord just wakes up and is winging it with our lives. He's not winging it. There's a time for everything. And the beautiful thing about the Lord is that he doesn't allow any of it without a purpose. Now, you may be going ahead and waiting properly, okay? You are dotting every I, crossing every T, doing all the things that it is that the Lord needs you to do. And yet the Lord can still look at you and say that it is not time yet. And if it isn't time yet, then it's not going to happen. It's not just about you waiting properly. It's also about his timing as well. He may need you to keep dotting every I and crossing every T for another year or so, but it doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. It just isn't time yet because there's still more that needs to happen. But the key word I want you to focus on is the word yet. Yet doesn't mean no. It just means not right now, but it's going to happen one day. When you understand that the Lord is intentional, then you are able to trust his timing. The Lord doesn't wake up one day and decide to do it based on how he's feeling. He already has it planned on the day, the hour, the minute, even down to the second that he plans to bless you. So the only person that's going to be surprised by his timing is you. Now, you may be discouraged waiting for God's timing sometimes, and that's understandable. But it comes down to the fact that you having the Lord in your life can't be this one-sided thing. It can't be transactional. You have to view him as a good father, whether he does the thing you're believing him for or not. Now, it's okay to want something to happen in your life, but it comes down to the fact that you still need to allow God to be God. And you allowing God to be God is you understanding that when it comes down to his timing, he isn't late. It's okay that you want something specific to happen in your life, but it comes down to the fact that you have to allow God to be God. And you allowing God to be God is you trusting his timing because you understand that it may look like he's late, but he isn't. You understand that you receiving this next blessing is bigger than you. And you also understand that there is a time for everything, which is why we have to trust his timing. So I want you to keep holding on because God may do it sooner than you think. Now, guess what, y'all? That's right. It's Q&S time. Q&S stands for quote in scripture. This is time I set aside in the episode to share a quote in scripture with you to encourage you throughout the week ahead. So the quote I chose for this week is from Miles Monroe, and he said, "God's purpose is more important than our plans." Your frustration in waiting for God's timing stems from the fact that you created your own plan. You created this plan on how you want things to happen, all the way down to when they're going to happen. You think that you have the grand plan. But the problem with that is that when you don't get your way and your plan actually doesn't happen, you turn around and look at God as if he is the one that's out of alignment. And we both know that he ain't the one that's out of alignment. Okay? Now, you can't go ahead and say that you believe in God and then also say that you feel like you know best. Both can't exist. And the same goes for your plan. You can't go ahead and have your plan and then decide that you only go and believe in parts of God's plan. You have to completely surrender your plan to the Lord. Why? Because the Lord knows best. And to be honest, your plan ain't that great. The Lord's plan is 1,000 times, maybe even 1,000,000 times better than your plan. And I know that stinks to hear it, but that's the truth. And you need to get with it. Okay? Because you're missing out on a lot. Because you're out here holding on to your plan as if it's the best. Let it go. Just let it go. We think that waiting for God to end a difficult season in our lives or for him to finally answer a prayer is torture. Because we feel like if he truly loved us, then why is he making us wait? But it isn't about the waiting at all. It's actually about God's purpose for our lives. Now, your plan has nothing to do with you living in your true purpose. And I say true purpose because you only know what you know based on what you have orchestrated in your mind. The Lord sees more in you than you see in yourself. So he is the only one that knows your true purpose in life. He's the one that created you. So instead of being upset that it hasn't happened yet, be grateful. The Lord could have changed everything by now, but he hasn't, because this next chapter of your life is attached to your purpose. So it isn't about the Lord making you wait. It's about the Lord preparing you to live in your purpose. The scripture I chose for this week is from Luke chapter 12, verse 47 through 48. And I'm reading from the New Living Translation. Now this scripture starts with Jesus speaking, and he said, "And a servant who knows what the master wants, but isn't prepared and doesn't carry out those instructions, will be severely punished. But someone who does not know and then does something wrong will be punished only lightly. When someone has been given much, much will be required in return. And when someone has been entrusted with much, even more will be required." Now, I feel like there are many of us that are out here just praying, believing, having faith, and waiting for more. But yet, the Lord goes ahead and won't give us more because we have not met the requirements to receive more. Now, I'm not sure if anybody told you this before or not, but I'll be the first if you never heard it. The Lord is not a magician. Yup, that's what I said. The Lord is not a magician. that is just going to be out here doing whatever it is that you want him to do just because you asked him to do it. And why is he not a magician? Because a magician don't love you. That's not their job. A magician's job is to impress you. Meanwhile, the Lord, on the other hand, his job is to love you, to uplift you, to protect you, to strengthen you, along a whole bunch of other things. His job is not to impress you. He doesn't have anything to prove to you. Now, when God goes ahead and decides to bless you, that is him trusting you with more. And what an honor it is to be trusted by the Lord. Now, since the Lord is trusting you with the thing that you prayed for, this also means that he's going to require more. And since he's requiring more from you, this also means that you have to go through a transformation so that you can handle more. So many of us go ahead and pray and believe and are asking God for more, but we don't even have the capacity to handle the more that we're asking for. So sometimes his timing is tied to you transforming so that you can meet his requirement. Now, I don't care how long you've been waiting. The Lord is still good, okay? And if he allowed you to see another day, that means he's not done with you yet. He hasn't forgotten about you. Better days are ahead. And he hasn't forgotten about your prayers. He plans to bless you, but he has to do it at the time that he sees fit. Now, if he hasn't gone ahead and blessed you with that thing that you've been praying and believing and waiting for, that means that maybe you haven't met the requirement to receive everything that you're asking for. And remember, the Lord is a protector. So he doesn't want to go ahead and give you something too early just for you to go ahead and be making a mess and get hurt from it. Especially when he's the one that got to clean up the mess and heal all the wounds. He's not going to put you into a battle to fight alone. And he's not going to put you in a battle with you being weak or unprepared. That would be the reaction of a careless father. And we already know that the Lord loves us too much to even allow us to endure something like that. Now, it all comes down to the fact that you can act like you mad at God because he's taking longer than you expected. Okay? But at that point, you just sound like a spoiled brat instead of sounding like the child of God he loves and believes that you are. So before you go, I want to leave you with this. We have to stop focusing on the fact that we simply want something to happen in our lives. Because when we came up with the fact that we want that thing to happen in our lives, we ignored all these consequences over here. Okay? We just want what we want when we want it. And we see no harm in that. But the Lord looks at that same thing and deems it as a horrible idea. We have to go back to trusting everything we know to be true about God, including his time. The Lord's time for you in every aspect of your life, every season of your life is already set. That's why we can't forget Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 11 where it says, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. You are focusing on everything that's happening in the in-between that it looks like God's not going to do it. But the Lord already has a time on when he plans to do it. So I want you to be encouraged that if the very thing you're going through right now don't look beautiful yet, God is going to turn it around and make it beautiful, but on his time, not yours. So instead of focusing on how ugly it looks, I want you to hold on and have faith that it's going to get better. God wants the best for you. And once you decide to fully believe and accept that, it's going to be easier for you to wait for God's timing. What God has for you won't pass you by. This is why we have to make sure we're living for him and that we're not living for the world or our flesh. Because when we live for the world and our flesh, all we see is the physical and all the things that aren't happening. But when we decide to live for him, we focus on the spiritual and we believe that God is always up to something good for us. The Lord hasn't forgotten about you. And to be honest, he plans to bless you probably sooner than you think. But you have to trust his timing and the fact that he knows what he's doing. Because at the end of the day, God's timing is always perfect.
I know what you're telling ain't the truth. I'd rather have all your weight removed. You wonder why I don't let you in. Because I got better things to do. Better things. Better things. Moving on to bigger and better things. Then do the worst, I need better things. If you knew better, you'd do better.